The off season may be long, but the future is bright.
You're Locked On Flames, your daily podcast on the Calgary Flames. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Well, hello everyone, and welcome to today's episode of Locked On Flames. As always, I'm your host, Jess Belmosto, and thank you so much for joining me here on Locked On Flames. Make sure you're subscribed to the podcast wherever you get your podcasts, free 99 across the board, and on YouTube as well. Today, we are going to talk about things Flames fans should be excited for, and you know what is there to look forward to? Right now, it just kind of feels a little bleh, but it's going to turn around. Like there's still things to look forward to, even if, players haven't been traded or this one hasn't been brought in or whatever. It's okay. We have a lot to look forward to. And like I mentioned earlier, just make sure you're subscribed to Locked On Flames wherever you get your podcasts. We are here for you every day here on Locked On Flames. Number one on this list is the youth movement. I think this has been at the top of my list probably since February, maybe even a little bit before, because we knew it was coming. We just didn't know when, and if these guys would still be young enough to be considered part of a youth movement. But there's a lot to be excited about. Craig Conroy has made it abundantly clear that the Flames are going to be getting younger. They are going to be moving players up to the NHL level. They're ready to make the jump, and that's exciting. That is something to look forward to. Adam Ruzicka, we have seen him in the lineup a lot the last season and a half, I would say. Obviously, he was a healthy scratch for a decent part of last season, but when he was in the lineup, he was making a difference. I believe I saw it was Hockey Viz, potentially, that did it was either Hockey Viz or Evolving Wild that did, or Evolving Hockey, did a visual or a thing of Adam Ruzicka and his impact on each line in the line mates he's played with. And he stabilized every single line. They showed a with and without, and I wish I saved it, but they showed a with Ruzicka and without Ruzicka, and there was a stark comparison. Seeing more of him on the ice is only going to make things better. Having him, playing consistently and racking up some minutes will do him good. And that will do any young developing player good. That's just, it's common sense. You need to practice. And, your practicing isn't just your morning skates and practices. It's quite literally the execution on the ice during the games. But Adam Ruzicka, again, is just someone that Flames fans should be familiar with, if you've been following this team for the last few years. And then another bright, shiny face in all of this is the other half of the French connection, Jakob Pellitier. I cannot tell you the last time I was this excited for a player to be part of the NHL club. I think this has been kind of an unfair adjustment to him. He wasn't able to have the opportunity. He didn't have a true opportunity to make an impact. And we know why that was happening. We understand that there were some roadblocks. Those roadblocks have now been removed. And I would say Jakob Pellitier is, destined to have a good NHL season, a true full rookie season. And I'm sure he's hungry. He's ready to prove himself, which is so exciting because this is something that he has worked for. And I remember when I saw the Flames out in LA, and it was the game where they got their butts handed to them 8-2. The Kings had scored like 4 goals in the first period, and I was ready to leave. But I stayed, and Pellitier was the only one on the ice that moved. He was fast. Everyone else just looked so slow. And then he had a turnover at some point in the game and got benched. Real effective stuff, especially when you're losing 8-2. That's a really prime opportunity to teach your player a lesson. If I'm being sarcastic, if you couldn't tell. But Jakob Pellitier is going to bring some offense and some speed to the lineup, which has been sorely lacking. And it's going to be so fun to watch him. He is electric on the ice, and he just has this big personality that everyone just kind of raves about. He does his big hugs in the celebrations. He's always just cheering his teammates on. And, I think the Flames are kind of in a position where they need that little cheerleader, and they need someone who is so fresh and so green to be like, guys, we can do this. We can do this. Like, anything is possible, and just still have this sense and naivety to them, because they just haven't been destroyed by the NHL yet. No, but in all seriousness, I think that Jakob Pellitier is going to be great on this team. I think that it is time for him to be seeing, again, those consistent minutes and consistent games, being in the lineup on a regular basis, just like Adam Ruzicka. But this next player, of course, is Matthew Coronato. I think that he is probably going to end up going back to Harvard for the school year. I don't know if I don't think that they have announced a decision yet. I haven't seen anything, but he was at development camp last week, and there were a lot of praises for his two-way game, his offensive abilities, and just his work ethic, which I think is really great to see. Last year, he did technically burn a year of his entry-level contract, so it is what it is. I think that at 20 years old, he could benefit from another season at Harvard, and then once the season's over, coming to Calgary if he's interested. I don't know what that realistically looks like. I would assume that's going to be what happens, but he is playing at such an elite level at Harvard, and he's, again, embracing and taking advantage of that ice time and the talent he's playing with and developing with. Taking advantage of that is really important. So I wouldn't blame him if he went back. And Harvard has a pretty good men's ice hockey team. So, they could definitely be in a championship contention there. But, of course, to round out this segment, we have to talk about Dustin Wolf. How exciting is it to have the future of Calgary goaltending on your doorstep? He is here. He is ready. He is just waiting for his moment to be seeing, again, consistent games. He's going to get consistent time on ice. He's a goalie, but he's starting, a few games a week, or I guess a few games every other week or something. I don't know. I'm not a coordinator, but I think it'd be great to see. It's going to be great to see him integrated into the Flames goaltending tandem. I think that it will take a weight off Jacob Markstrom while giving Dustin Wolf a chance to get comfortable and get situated in the NHL. That it's very exciting to look forward to that, especially when your goaltender had a bum season last year and still has another 3 seasons left on his 6-year contract at the age of 33. So that is a whole lot of happiness and excitement right there. And we are going to continue this conversation talking about the Flames organization as a whole, really, a whole new entity. But before we do that, we are going to take a quick break to talk about FanDuel. Take your first swing at betting MLB on FanDuel and get 10 times your first bet amount in bonus bets up to $200. That's right. That's $200 you can spend betting everything from money line to the over-under to who you think is going to hit the first home run. All on an app that is safe, secure, and super easy to use. Plus, when you win, you can get paid instantly. Fantastic feature. If you're like me, you win and then just got to cash out while you're ahead, right? There is no better place to bet on Major League Baseball than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So sign up today and visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get up to $200 in bonus bets. That is FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, the official partner of Major League Baseball. And thank you, everyone, for hanging out with me today on Locked On Flames. We are just cruising through the off season. It is technically the second week of July, and we have a lot of summer left before we see the Flames roster and any semblance of an opening night roster. So make sure you're following us wherever you get your podcasts, because we're here for you all through the off season, and we get to talk about really exciting things like this new front office and the exciting things that come along with a whole new vision. The Flames are in a very, very interesting spot. I think that I've said that every off season since I've started hosting this show, but they find themselves in interesting predicaments every offseason, and this time it finally feels like a legitimate change for good. And obviously last summer was, we don't need to talk about that. We have approached a year since Gaudreau left, and then later this month is the Tkachuk anniversary, and I'm doing a crossover with Armando Velez from Locked On Panthers, and we're going to talk all about that. But there's good happening here. There needed to be a new voice. Brad Treliving left. Daryl Sutter was fired, relieved of his duties. And the Flames now have Craig Conroy, Jarome Iginla, Ryan Huska, Mark Savard, and obviously other voices making decisions now. And it is exciting to see this organization take steps forward. And you're probably saying to yourself, what is she talking about? Like, this team hasn't done anything. Like, it's been a quiet off season. Adding those depth free agent signings to your AHL roster makes it possible for players to move up to the NHL. And you need to have that. Otherwise, you're not going to have, you're not going to be up to regulation, and you're going to be in some trouble, and you're not going to have men to fill out your team. But this is where things are this is where we're at, right? We have moved on from the core of the Calgary Flames and, wanting to win with them, thinking we can win on them, betting on them, and betting on ourselves or them to get to the Stanley Cup. And we're over that. We have crossed that bridge, and Craig Conroy has really made it clear that while they're going to be a younger team, they still want to compete and be competitive. That can kind of go either or, in my opinion. I think it depends on your definition of competitive and what you are truly going for. And we say it all the time here. No one is tanking on purpose. Players are not going out there and putting on a half performance just to maybe get a higher draft pick. That's not realistically how it works. But I think what is so exciting is just having this new vision, right? It feels like a clean slate. You have these players tied up in long contracts. That's fine. that's all well and good. You can't change that. But what you can do now is plug in players that you want to play around them and what might work. Are you going to see Mangiapane and his freshly shaved head playing on a higher line if they trade Backlund? Are you going to see Dylan Dubé on, a bottom six role and, they're going to move Pelts up to the first line or something like that? There is a lot of room to play around, and I think that Ryan Huska is going to he has his work cut out for him for a lot of different reasons, but putting together a cohesive roster is going to be important. We talk about that all the time here, and how your players need to be on the same page. Not just the same page, but the same book, the same page, the same paragraph, the same sentence, same line, like the same word. It doesn't have to always be like that, but if you want a successful season, you have to have stable communications and a clear, concise goal. It has to be executed well. Otherwise, you're just going out there and icing players. Nothing. It might not get done. Nothing might get done. So I think what's really exciting too is all this new arena talk. Like, it's been approved. I don't know where things stand now because I know there was an election and I don't know anything really about Canadian politics because I live in America and American politics are, depressing enough. I don't need to make it even potentially worse with more bad news, but I think right now this is a very exciting time for the Flames. It is a transition period. Again, if you have listened to this show for any period of time, or if you listened back last year and you're coming back now, you probably heard me say, they're in a transition period. They are, again, they find themselves here, but because there have been positive changes made instead of, their hand kind of being forced and they have to make changes. And I really think it's okay to be excited for this. It's excited to look forward to a whole new team, basically. You're getting a new arena and a new entertainment center, entertainment district. You're playing in the Heritage Classic this fall. There's so much to be excited for. And again, it's kind of like the opposite of the fear of the unknown. It's just, there's hope that things will be better and things will be different. And while we wait for Craig Conroy to make some moves, we just have to keep falling back on the anticipation and the excitement of this upcoming season and just how different things are going to be. And changes is good. It's not always a bad, scary thing, no matter what some of our anxieties tell us. But coming up next, we are going to talk about some bounce back candidates and why you should be excited for players that are already here, that played at the NHL level last season rather. And, who doesn't love a good comeback story? And thank you, everyone, for tuning in to Locked On Flames. Make sure you're subscribed wherever you get your podcasts, and we are available for free on YouTube as well. There are so many bounce back candidates. I was working on an article last night about Jakob Markstrom's performance last season and why he is a prime candidate for a bounce back player. Why he could really take next season by the horns and just, reclaim it for himself. But then I was nauseous looking at the stats, so I had to close my laptop. I was just, it was incredibly discouraging. And there's more than one player that, can be primed as a perfect bounce back candidate. I think this team has plenty of them. Obviously, Jakob Markstrom had a horrible year goaltending, and he wants to be better. So let's see if he, puts his money where his mouth is. You have Andrew Mangiapane, who dropped off significantly in production. You have Oliver Shillington, who missed all of last season in taking care of himself. I don't believe he was ever officially put in or joined the player assistance program. I think he was just able to take time away from the team and do it that way and use I'm not sure. I could be very wrong. And of course you have Jonathan Huberdeau, who you're paying a lot of money. His extension kicks in this year at, what is it, $10.5 million? Oh my God, I wish I could make that much money. I wouldn't know what to do with all that money. I got a raise at my job and I switched jobs and I'm making a little bit more money and I'm like, ooh, I can buy some new hockey stuff. I could not imagine what I would do if I was bringing in $10.5 million. That would be absurd. What are some things you would buy? Or what would be your first purchase after you receive a payment like that or something? I just think Jonathan Huberdeau, again, is one of the players that disappointed last year after playing, having a 115-point season the year prior, coming to Calgary and never getting adjusted. So is it are we going to see the removal of Daryl Sutter as, hey, good things are going to happen because he's gone? It doesn't automatically, him being gone does not mean everything just magically gets better. You have to do some work. You have to figure out, what was I doing? Where were my mechanics wrong? Or where were they off? Not even wrong. Where were they off? How, look at film from, years prior where you were successful and compare it to last season and be like, this is how I need to bring this back and, reintegrate it back into my game. And I think Huberdeau, a lot of it really was him playing on his off wing, and he was hurt at some points. I think he had a lingering injury pretty much all season too, which, it stinks. I can't imagine, I have everyday back pain. I can't imagine if I had to go out and play hockey every other night. I'd probably be in a lot more pain. But it's encouraging to see players training. Obviously they have to train, but they're putting in the work and they want us to see that they're doing work. I think NHL players are so interesting when it comes to social media because with their social media presence, it's things they want us to see. They want us to see them at the gym. They want us to see them at a rink back home and playing and, show their skating. They want us to see their very cute dogs. But again, it really does lead me to believe there are going to be plenty of bounce backs this year, and it doesn't have to happen immediately. You kind of have to sustain something like that in order for it to really be a bounce back and a comeback year. But there's a new coach. There's a new captain at the head of the ship, and he has some pretty difficult work cut out for him, and we've talked about that. I love the idea of seeing new lines and seeing these stars come back and be themselves, but also taking the younger players under their wing and hearing about this one's mentoring that one and how Dustin Wolf has, practiced and learned with Jakob Markstrom and how his goalie transition is going. I want to hear everything. I'm so excited for all of the storylines. There is one story that I hope gets written, and I don't know how to, I don't think I can just pitch this to a writer. If I was in Calgary, I would absolutely pitch this story. So go ahead and take it. But I want to see someone do like a day in the life, or probably like a week in the life of Jarome Iginla, and how he is splitting his time between coaching in juniors and, of course, being a special advisor to the general manager. I want to see his day-to-day life and what his day looks like and how he stretches himself and spreads himself thin, or, is where he needs to be. And is it effective? I don't know. I just think it's really exciting. There are a lot of good things that are ahead of the Flames. Yes, it's going to be stinky for a little bit. No one is saying you're going out there and you're going to be Stanley Cup contenders just because there's been some few positive changes and a little bit of roster turnover and you have a new coach. No one is saying that. You might just, again, still be in that soggy middle, but you are making progress with your new roster. Rome wasn't built in a day, and neither is a championship team. You can't do that. It's that simple. But thank you, everyone. And, that does it for today's episode. And I appreciate all of you tuning in and making Locked On Flames part of your day. I am so happy to just continue hosting this show. It is such an exciting part of my day. Like, I wouldn't know what to do if it was just gone. But again, you can subscribe to the show your support by leaving 5-star rating, a nice little review. Tell your friends, and not just about Locked On Flames, but if there's baseball, basketball, football, college teams, other, Locked On NHL is fantastic. And if there's one thing that I love about this network and how it's daily, it's, you get instant coverage of the big moves, like Brad Treliving going to Toronto. I listened to Locked On Leafs as soon as that episode dropped. And when Kyle Dubas was announced in Pittsburgh, I listened to Locked On Penguins. I am looking forward to listening to whoever trades for Elias Lindholm and to get their perception of things. And like I mentioned earlier, I will be doing a crossover episode with Armando from Locked On Florida Panthers. And we're going to talk about the trade that happened almost a year ago with Matthew Tkachuk, Jonathan Huberdeau, and of course, Mackenzie Weegar. And like I said, that does it for me today. I'll stop chewing your ear off, but I will see you tomorrow. And hopefully we'll have some news to talk about.